Welcome to The Debate. Today we are conducting a forensic analysis of a very specific and quite fascinating document titled Solitude and Sanctuary in the Wild. Now, this isn't a short story, and it isn't a scientific paper. It's a prompt sheet, a set of instructions designed to generate voice output for two specific scenarios involving animals facing isolation.
Yeah, and it is a really deceptive document, honestly. On the surface, it looks like a request for two simple animal fables, a penguin and a monkey. But when you actually peel back the layers and look at the constraints, the word counts, the emotional targets, the requested tone, it raises some massive questions about how we frame the natural world.
Exactly. And that brings us to the central question we are tackling today. Does the requested emotional framing of these animal stories reveal a deeper truth about sentient resilience and bravery, or does it impose a human-centric layer of romanticism over the harsh biological realities of death and rejection?
I think it is clearly the latter. I think these prompts are a masterclass in projection. They're asking us to look at biological failure and call it a hero's journey.
And I take the opposing view. I argue that the text specifically highlights genuine animal agency. When the prompt asks for themes of bravery and resilience, it isn't asking us to lie. It's asking us to recognize the dignity of these creatures. The prompt explicitly describes the penguin as having emotional tension and the monkey as finding comfort. That suggests these are beings with profound internal states, not just biological machines.
Right, but emotional tension is a narrative device, not necessarily a biological reality. I come at this from a completely different angle. I argue that the text describes fatal scenarios, isolation, rejection, and imminent death, and tries to dress them up. The prompt's request for a tender, reflective tone or gentle hope is an instructional overlay designed to make the listener feel better. It masks the bleak reality of specific, brutal behaviors, essentially suicidal wandering and maternal abandonment, with a veneer of storytelling.
Let's get right into the text then, because I think the language itself supports my position on agency. If you look at case 1, the penguin, the prompt reads, quote, "A penguin leaves its group." It does not say the penguin got lost. It does not say the penguin was blown away by a storm. It says it leaves.
Which implies a conscious choice.
Precisely, it implies volition. Similarly, in case 2, the text says the monkey decides to stay with its favorite toy. The source material uses active verbs, leaves, decides. The request is to describe the scene vividly, capturing emotional tension. If these were just biological automatons failing to survive, there would be no tension, only mechanics. The fact that the prompt asks for bravery in the penguin's case suggests that the animal is aware of the stakes. It is facing the cold and the loneliness with a conscious fortitude. That isn't projection. That is a recognition of the animal's experience.
I see why you latch onto the grammar, but let me give you a different perspective on those same words. You see leaves its group as agency. I see it as a malfunction. We are talking about a penguin here. These are obligate social animals. In the context of danger or death, which the text explicitly mentions, a penguin leaving the colony is not an explorer. It is an animal whose survival instincts have inverted.
Inverted how?
Well, in ethology, when a social animal walks away from the safety of the group into a landscape of danger or death, it's often a sign of neurological degradation, disease, or extreme environmental stress. It's a breakdown. But the prompt doesn't ask us to describe a breakdown. It asks us to describe a story. And regarding the monkey, you emphasize that it decides to stay with the toy. But the text frames this decision immediately after stating it was rejected by its group and mother. When you are a young primate rejected by your mother, you don't have options. You don't make a decision in the way a human chooses a career or a vacation spot. You are in a state of desperate physiological necessity.
But that's exactly why the word resilience is in the prompt, isn't it? Resilience isn't about having good options. It's about enduring the bad ones.
Is it resilience, or is it just the final stage of desperation? The prompt asks for a tender, reflective tone and gentle hope. I argue that this instruction is for the benefit of the human audience, not a descriptor of the monkey's reality. The text is asking the writer to sanitize a death sentence. Solitude in the wild is rarely a sanctuary. It's usually fatal. By requesting simple vocabulary in an easy-to-read aloud format, the prompt is essentially asking for a fable, a simplification that obscures the raw violence of the situation.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it assumes that storytelling equals lying. You seem to think that if we attribute emotion to an animal, we are automatically anthropomorphizing it. Let's dig into the core debate, specifically regarding the penguin in case 1. The topic here is whether we are looking at suicide or solitude.
I think suicide is a loaded human term, but disorientation leading to death is certainly accurate.
The prompt asks the writer to convey sadness, isolation, and bravery. Now, you can't have bravery without understanding the danger. The text explicitly states the penguin walks toward danger or death. If the penguin were merely disoriented, if its internal compass was just broken, bravery would be the wrong instruction. The prompt would ask for confusion or panic, but it doesn't. It asks for bravery and emotional tension. This implies that the penguin is marching into that cold with a certain stoicism. It frames the act of leaving the group as a narrative arc, a conscious journey rather than a mistake.
That is a compelling argument for the writer, sure. But have you considered that the prompt is asking for the output to sound brave regardless of the penguin's internal state? The text is a set of instructions for voice output. It wants a product that makes the listener feel a certain way. To narrate a penguin freezing to death as brave is the definition of anthropomorphism.
Why is it anthropomorphism to assume a penguin can feel fear and overcome it?
Because bravery is a moral virtue. It implies a conquest of fear for a higher purpose. A penguin walking away from the colony toward danger is likely suffering from a breakdown of its sensory processing. The prompt asks us to end with a reflective or dramatic note. That instruction forces meaning onto an event that might just be entropy. You are looking at a tragedy and calling it a hero's journey because the prompt told you to use vivid imagery.
I think you are stripping the animal of its capacity for experience. The prompt asks for sadness. Sadness is an emotion. If we accept the prompt's premise that the scene contains sadness, we are accepting that the penguin feels the loss of the group. And if it feels the loss but continues to walk toward the loneliness, which is another specific word in the text, then bravery is the only appropriate word for enduring that experience. It isn't just entropy if there is an emotional cost.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the presence of the word sadness in a prompt confirms the emotional reality of the animal. It confirms the emotional desire of the prompt writer. But let's look at the movement mentioned. The text asks to describe the movement of the penguin. You see a march of dignity. I see the stumbling of an animal that is out of place. The text juxtaposes leaving its group with danger or death. In evolutionary terms, that is the ultimate failure. The prompt tries to rescue this failure by labeling it brave. It's a coping mechanism for the observer. We don't want to watch a penguin die for no reason, so we write a script where he's doing it for solitude.
Or perhaps solitude is a valid biological drive that we just don't fully understand in other species. But let's shift to case 2, because I think the monkey scenario actually strengthens my argument for agency and resilience.
The monkey scenario is even darker, if you ask me.
See, I completely disagree. The text describes a young monkey rejected by its group and mother. That is the catalyst. But the reaction, the core of the prompt, is that the monkey finds comfort in a toy. It decides to stay with its favorite toy. The prompt explicitly asks to convey resilience. Resilience is the ability to recover or adapt. The monkey has lost its biological protector, yet it finds a sanctuary, to use the document's title, in this object.
A sanctuary in a toy. We really need to look at this through the lens of developmental psychology. Are you familiar with Harlow's monkeys?
The wire mother versus the cloth mother experiments?
Exactly. Infant monkeys, when isolated, would cling to a cloth-covered wire frame for comfort, even if it provided no food. The prompt says the monkey finds comfort in the toy. I look at that and I don't see resilience. I see a pathology. I see a supernormal stimulus. The monkey is clinging to the toy because its brain is wired to cling to fur. In the wild, a young primate clinging to an inanimate object after maternal rejection isn't resilience. It is a surrogate for the mother. It highlights the severity of the trauma.
But it is finding comfort. The text states that as a fact.
the comfort it finds in the toy. It asks for a tender, reflective tone and a gentle hope. This suggests that the monkey isn't just dying of exposure, it is psychologically adapting. It is using the toy to self-soothe. That is a sophisticated cognitive act. It shows that the creature is seeking stability in chaos.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. I look at the phrase favorite toy and comfort it finds in the toy, and I see the writer trying to soften the blow. The gentle hope requested is the lie here. What hope is there for a young monkey rejected by its group? The gentle hope is, again, for the audience. The text wants us to look at a devastating abandonment and feel tender. It glosses over the violence of the rejection. The monkey deciding to stay with the toy is not agency. It is the absence of any other option. The toy is the only thing that hasn't rejected it.
I think you're dismissing the emotional reality of the comfort too quickly. Even if the biological outlook is grim, the subjective experience, the comfort, is real. The prompt asks us to focus on that subjective experience. When it asks for gentle hope, it might be referring to the monkey's internal state. The hope that the toy provides safety. That isn't a lie. It's a description of the monkey's feeling in that moment.
Gentle hope in the face of starvation and predation, that seems like a massive stretch. The text asks for the story to end with a tender, reflective tone. To me, this suggests the solitude and sanctuary title is ironic, or at least highly constructed. The sanctuary is the toy, but it's a false sanctuary. It offers no protection. By asking the writer to focus on the comfort, the prompt directs our attention away from the danger inherent in being alone. It's asking for a vignette that feels good rather than one that is true.
But does a story have to encompass the entire life cycle to be true? Can it just be true to the moment? The text asks for a narrated story with emotional tone. It is capturing a specific beat in time where the monkey feels comfort. That is valid.
It's valid as fiction, but we have to ask about the function of these narrative constraints. Look at the specific limitations in the source. Concise, around 150 to 200 words each. Easy to read aloud. Avoids complex vocabulary.
Right, and I think those constraints are vital. They defend the accessibility of the experience.
They enforce a reductionist view.
I disagree. By limiting the word count and avoiding complex vocabulary, the prompt forces the writer to strip away the noise and focus on the primal emotional truth. You don't need complex words to describe cold or loneliness. In fact, complex vocabulary often distances us from the raw feeling. The instruction to be emotionally engaging and easy to read aloud means the story is designed to connect directly with the listener's empathy.
But connection at what cost? The constraints demand simplicity. Avoid complex vocabulary. The reality of ethology, of animal behavior, is complex. It isn't simple. By demanding simple vocabulary, the prompt ensures that we cannot discuss the nuance of why the mother rejected the monkey or the physiological effects of hypothermia on the penguin. We are left only with sadness and hope.
That's a feature, not a bug. The prompt isn't a biology textbook. It's a request for a narrated story. It explicitly asks for vivid imagery. You can have vivid imagery with simple words. The ice was sharp. The wind howled.
The penguin marched bravely.
Exactly. The constraint forces a focus on the essential emotional arc. It accesses a universal feeling. We've all felt rejected. We've all felt cold. The prompt uses these animals to bridge the gap between human and non-human experience.
I come at it from a different way. I think the constraints prioritize the aesthetic of the voice output over the reality of the wild. The prompt is designing a product. Easy to read aloud means it needs a rhythm, a cadence. It wants a reflective or dramatic note at the end. Nature doesn't end on a dramatic note. It just continues or it stops. By forcing a narrative structure, a beginning, a middle, and a reflective end onto a chaotic biological event, the prompt creates a falsification. It turns the penguin's death march into a poem.
And I would argue that poetry is how we understand the world. The reflective note allows us to process the tragedy. Without it, it's just data. The prompt asks for solitude and sanctuary. It frames these difficult moments, leaving the group, being rejected, as opportunities to explore the self.
Explore the self? We are talking about a monkey holding a toy.
Yes, and the emotional tension requested in the text proves that there is a self there to be explored. If there were no self, there would be no tension.
Or the tension is entirely in the mind of the scriptwriter?
I think we're reaching the core of our disagreement here. You see the text as a tool for manipulation, while I see it as a tool for empathy.
I see it as a tool for comfort, for human comfort.
Let's look at the sanctuary part of the title again. Solitude and sanctuary. In case 1, the sanctuary seems to be the dignity of the choice. In case 2, it's the toy.
In case 1, the sanctuary is death. The penguin walks toward danger or death. The prompt asks for isolation. The only sanctuary from the cold in the group politics is the end. In case 2, the sanctuary is an illusion, the toy. So the title itself, Solitude and Sanctuary, is framing these tragic isolates as having found something profound when they've actually just lost everything.
But isn't the capacity to find meaning in loss a form of resilience? The prompt for the monkey asks for sadness, resilience, and gentle hope. The resilience is in the act of holding on. The monkey decides to stay. It doesn't run after the mother who rejected it. It stays. That is a boundary. That is a definition of self.
Decides to stay could just as easily mean it is too weak to move. Again, the text allows you to project agency onto inaction. The gentle hope is the writer hoping the monkey survives, not the monkey having a plan.
But let me challenge you on the purpose of the vivid imagery. The text asks the writer to create a picture. If the monkey is simply weak, the imagery is static. But if the monkey is finding comfort, the imagery becomes dynamic. It involves interaction. The text demands that we see the monkey not just as a victim, but as a participant.
A participant in its own demise? Sure. But look, I am not denying that the prompt creates a compelling image. I am denying that the image reflects the wild mentioned in the title. The title is Solitude and Sanctuary in the Wild. But the prompt strips away the wildness. It removes the predators, the hunger, the visceral grime of nature, and replaces it with simple vocabulary and gentle hope. It sanitizes the wild to make it palatable for the voice output.
I don't think it strips away the wildness. I think it focuses on the internal wildness, the emotional landscape. The text asks for emotional tension. That is a form of wildness. The storm inside the penguin is just as real as the storm outside.
That is a very poetic interpretation, but I think it misses the cold, hard functionality of the document. This is a prompt sheet. It is designed to produce content that is easy to read aloud. It is prioritizing the flow of the human voice over the facts of the animal life. And that is why I call it projection. We are projecting our need for rhythm, for structure, for resolution onto creatures that live in a world of chaos.
We're running close on time, so let's move to summarize our positions on this text. I want to reiterate that this source material provides a blueprint for understanding animal interiority.
And I maintain it's a blueprint for human storytelling.
To summarize my view, the prompts for bravery and resilience are not accidental. They are the core instructions. They ask us to witness the animal's dignity in the face of cold and rejection. By using active verbs like leaves and decides, and by requesting emotional tension, the text acknowledges that these animals are protagonists in their own lives, not just victims of biology. The vivid imagery serves to highlight their experience, and the requested reflective tone honors their struggle. It frames them as beings capable of finding sanctuary, even if that sanctuary is just a feeling.
And to summarize my position, this source material is a guide for emotional manipulation. The explicit instructions to convey gentle hope in the face of abandonment and bravery in the face of death reveal more about our need to soften the edges of nature than the experience of the penguin or the monkey. The constraints, simple vocabulary, easy to read aloud, ensure that the grim reality is packaged into a palatable, fable-like product. We are projecting our need for a happy ending, or at least a meaningful one, onto a canvas of biological failure. We are turning the chaotic wild into a structured sanctuary because we simply can't bear to look at the solitude directly.
I think the value of the text lies in that tension. It asks us to look at solitude, which is usually terrifying, and find sanctuary, or at least meaning, within it.
And I think the text proves that we are terrified of true solitude, so we invent sanctuaries like bravery or toys to fill the void.
Whether the emotional tension is inherent in the wild or created by the storyteller's pen is a question the listener will have to decide.
But there is no doubt that the prompts in Solitude and Sanctuary in the Wild force us to confront how we view isolation, both for ourselves and for the creatures we share the planet with.
Indeed. It forces us to ask if we can handle the story without the gentle hope.
That brings us to the end of today's debate. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.